Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Back.
All right, we're going to start the meeting. We'll call the meeting to order.
Oh, sorry.
So all members of council can have, there we go.
Back.
Good. We got we're going to start the meeting. We're all together again to order. Good. All right. We'll call the meeting to order, and first item of business is conflict of interest declaration, pecuniary interest. So on, I think some of us have the community grants, conflict 9.1. My wife is chair of that committee, but neither her or I get any remuneration or any financial monetary interest from anything that would be happening there. So I'll just declare that she's on that. Does anybody else have any other declarations? Councillor Pauls?
Yeah, I will abstain from speaking on 13.2 or voting or anything for that matter. I will abstain from speaking on
and then Councillor Simpson?
13.2.
Thank you, and I'll just make note that same with you. There's one committee that I sit on for that, but I don't gain anything from it. So, but I'm just declaring, but also participate. Thank you, and I'll just make note that same with you. There's one committee that I sit on for that.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I as well sit on the community safety community, and so obviously as a community member, none of us gain any monetary gain from it. So just wanted to inform council of that. As a community member, none of us
and Councillor Holmes?
Yeah, and I'm on that same committee.
Okay, good.
Monetary gain from it.
Good thing we don't have to recuse ourselves. The meeting will be over at that item, I guess. So, okay, thank you for that, everybody. And then we now will go to adoption of the agenda. There is one addition on the agenda, and that is 13.3 will be a new item. It'll be land purchase, and then that will cause item 13, the present 13.3 to be renumbered as 13.4.
I'm on that same committee.
Okay, good. Good thing we don't have any other additions to the agenda or amendments. Okay, thank you for that, everybody. And then
thank you, Worship. And just 10 point
there is one addition
one under
on the agenda,
council committees and course under council committees and reports.
New item. It'll be land purchase. And you're there right now, and you're going to be speaking to that, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So then we have the amended agenda. How say you? Councillor Simpson, you're moving the amended agenda? Okay, thank you. With tonight, our legislative coordinator advises that I don't have to do a roll call for the votes anymore. So that's a nice relief. I should need only 1 liter less water for that now, so that's good. So when I call the vote, then I won't have to do the roll call right now. So we have that motion by Councillor Simpson for the adoption of the agenda. All in favor, raise your hand, please. Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. All 7. Then we're going to item 3.1, regular council meeting minutes of May 10. There's a slight correction on the minutes there on the for the caveat for the Spruce Woods item. There was a caveat number that was incorrect, and it should be actually numbered. It was caveat number 091227985, and the correct caveat number should be 091227285. So that minor amendment will be made to the minutes. Are there any other errors or omissions or amendments to the minutes? If not, I entertain a motion to adopt the minutes as amended. Councillor Pauls moves. Any discussion? I see none. I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, that's all unanimous again. So if I do make an error and you actually were voting against, please speak up and correct me. But so from what I saw, it was unanimous. So the minutes will record that. Then we have item 4.1, South Coaldale Transportation Network Progress Update, and we have Spencer, I think, is going to speak to that. So welcome, Spencer, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening to you and Council. I'll keep this item fairly brief. As you'll probably notice, the attachment is the unsummarized feedback summary from, unsummarized feedback from the South Coaldale Transportation Network engagement that ran April and a part of May. Really, at this point, it's a check-in to let Council know that that engagement period for that project has closed, and we will now be moving on with next steps in the broader discussion about how to strategically plan for future upgrades and transportation network changes in that part of the community. So from here forward, once the unsummarized feedback is accepted by Council, it'll be posted on the project website, and then after that, it'll be disseminated and discussed with our transportation consultants from Watt Engineering, who had done some of the work with some of the technical items that led that engagement. And the hope is by the by the June 14th meeting, we will have a short list of options in terms of how Council may wish to proceed with specific strategic next steps for how that network may change in the future. That's really all I have at this point in time, and I'm happy to answer any questions Council may have.
Are there any questions through this, Spencer? Councillor Holm?
Thank you, Worship. Spencer, can you remind me again how many people actually responded to the survey?
Certainly, through the chair to Councillor Holm, excellent question. The response to that would be, I believe, 87 or 88. It may have been 87 and a half, and somebody didn't quite finish the survey, but it was just shy of 100 folks that completed the survey and provided feedback.
Thank you.
Any other questions through the Spencer? Okay, so that's good. Thank you very much for the report and for all the work that goes into these surveys and engagement procedures. With the recommendation is for us to receive this updated report for information. Does anybody care to make a motion like that? Or Councillor Holm, you're moving for information? Okay. Any discussion? I'm seeing none. I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, and that's unanimous as well. Thank you very much. Then we're down to item 7.1. And we have its 2021 Property Tax Bylaw 813-C-04-21. And we can entertain readings of that bylaw, and we have Kyle Beauchamp to speak on that matter. Welcome, Kyle.
Yeah, thanks and good evening, everyone. So again, we do have the 2021 Property Tax Bylaw presented to Council for second and third reading. First reading was passed by Council on April 26, 2021. So largely the only changes in this bylaw is to account for the approved Lethbridge County tax rates, which we need to incorporate as part of the orders of annexation in the properties which were annexed. So again, the property tax bylaw is a 0% tax increase on the municipal portion for the non-residential and residential areas in Koldale. There is a slight increase in the education portion to both of those classes. However, that is outside the control of the town of Koldale. Even though we do say it's a 0% tax increase, some people may see increases in their property taxes, while others may see a decrease based on changes that may happen with their assessed value of their property. We do adjust for the tax rate based on inflation and potential changes in assessments on an overall basis. But again, that is an overall, and some may be higher and some may be lower. Again, too, we do have an operating surplus as far as property tax assessment that was slightly higher than budgeted, came in about $108,000. So we are looking again for council's approval to carry that surplus over into the 2021 budget to account for accommodation costs that we anticipate when the new RCMP detachment is occupied in the near future. So that being said, I will turn it back to council for any questions.
Okay, the floor is open to council for any questions they might have through the administration. Okay, there doesn't appear to be any questions. Does anybody want to sponsor a second reading of the bylaw? Well, tie goes to the lady, I guess, in this instance. So Brianne makes a motion. Any discussion? I see none. I'll call the question. All in favor? And that's unanimous as well. Thank you. Then we are able to accept third readings if anybody cares to sponsor that. Okay, I'll give that to the lady as well, Councillor Lloyd, and make some motion to sponsor third reading of the bylaw. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? And that's unanimous. And then Kyle's requesting a motion on item recommendation number 3, that council amend the 2021 operating budget by increase budgeted municipal expenses by $108,684 for the expected accommodation cost of the new RCMP facility. Councillor Lloyd, you're making a motion? Okay, I think that's what she said. So assuming that that was her intent, I'll ask if there's any discussion. I see none. I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, and that's 7 in favor. Unanimous. Thank you. And then we have item 7.2, land use rezoning bylaw 815-P-05-21. And we can ask to consider first reading, and we have Melanie Messier to present on that bylaw. Welcome, Melanie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, Council. The following report is to present Council with an application to redesignate the lands legally described as Lot 2, Block 20, Plan 9910549 from the current zoning of residential multi-unit R2 to direct control DC. This matter has come before Council before in the form of land use rezoning bylaw 807, which was brought forth to Council at the April 12th and May 10th regular Council meetings. It was during the initial advertising period for the public hearing associated with bylaw 807 that initial feedback indicated concern for the broader uses of commercial C1, which was the original proposal. In response, the applicant has chosen to go in a different direction to initiate a new rezoning application to redesignate the same parcel from residential multi-unit to direct control DC. The intent behind the shift to redesignate as direct control includes that the uses would not be able to effectively be governed through a conventional zoning and could be considered appropriate for a property with such unique contextual elements. The applicant has provided an updated descriptive narrative inclusive of a tentative site plan, which highlights proposed building size and layout, expected activities, as well as expected visitor and vehicle traffic numbers, amongst other considerations. Land uses adjacent to the parcel include urban reserve to the west, Highway 3, and the CP rail line to the south, and a mixture of residential land use districts to the north. As per the requirements of land use redesignation proceedings, a public hearing will be advertised in the Sunny South newspaper for 2 consecutive weeks, and a notice will be mailed out to neighboring property owners or neighboring properties. An advertisement will also include digital advertising as part of the pilot project on the Let's Connect Coaldale platform. So finally, decision options include that council is respectfully requested to vote on the first reading of bylaw 815 with the recommendation that council provides first reading of bylaw 815 and set the public hearing date and time as June 14th at 5:40 p.m. And with that, I'll pass it back to you, Mr. Mayor, for any questions that council may have.
Thank you, Melanie. I'll open the floor to members of council if they have any questions through the administration. Okay, not as inquisitive so far. So, all right. Anybody care to sponsor first reading, or what's your desire? Councillor Holm moves for first reading of the bylaw.
Thank you, Worship. I would.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? Okay, I'm seeing none. I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, and that's 7 hands in favor, so that's unanimous. So that is first reading, and the public hearing will be 5:40 on June the 14th. Okay, and then we have the next item, land use rezoning bylaw 816-P-05-21. And we have Cam Mills would like to introduce that item. So the floor is yours, Cam.
Thank you very much, Mayor Craig. I'm just going to share my screen. So just forgive me as I fumble through this really quickly. And everyone can see a PowerPoint presentation?
Yes, I see it.
Excellent. Okay. So thank you very much. So as you mentioned, I'm here to speak this evening regarding land use rezoning bylaw 816-P-0321, which is for the proposed rezoning of a parcel of land currently zoned as commercial C1 to direct control in order to allow for the opening of a cannabis retail facility. And this represents first reading of the prospective bylaw. So a few notes with respect to the objective of the presentation. The town of Coaldale is in receipt of rezoning application for a property described as Plan 6476 AA Block 9, Block 7, Lot 2, from Commercial C1 to Direct Control. Current regulations for the town of Coaldale in the land use bylaw require rezoning to DC in order to approve this proposed use, which is a cannabis retail sales facility. And this is the second application for a cannabis retail sales facility that has been brought forward to council since the use requiring redistricting to DC was incorporated into the land use bylaw approximately 2.5 years ago. A rezoning to approve this type of facility was brought forward, as council likely recalls, in March of this year, and the rezoning was ultimately approved following a public hearing in April of 2021. And again, what we're doing tonight is considering first reading of bylaw 816-P-0321. Approval of first reading merely allows for a public hearing and for the applicant and landowner to speak in order to present their case for why approval would be considered. So provide a location for council's reference here as a map shown, which I believe should have been included as part of the attachments for the staff report. The map provided here shows the proposed location. The parcel is located on Main Street within downtown Coaldale, directly across from Custom Automotive on the eastern portion of the block, which also includes the Campbell Clinic. The lot is one of a block of 4 lots that are currently slated for redevelopment to some type of commercial use. And in this case, the lot in question is the second lot in from the adjacent road, which is 16th Street. Some key considerations that should guide council's decision-making on this matter would be as follows. First, cannabis retail sales is regulated use in the town of Coaldale land use bylaw. Second, there is a schedule of the land use bylaw, Schedule 14, which guides decision-making with respect to these matters. And as a direct control requirement is in place, there are measurable standards for separation which are applied. And these measurements are largely based on public health measures, as noted by Alberta Health Services during the period of time leading up to legalization of cannabis in AHS's correspondence with the town. Council will likely recall that these measures are substantially more restrictive than what was set out as a baseline minimum requirement by Municipal Affairs as guidance for regulating this type of use, and that generally Council opted to implement the more restrictive measures on the grounds that a cautious approach to legalization, given the lack of certainty as to what would ultimately look like, was appropriate and in line with community feedback. Third, the regulations provide for 3 distinct buffer zones. Council has the authority to waive or modify these setback requirements at their discretion. This fundamentally forms the basis of the application, as it's up to Council to decide if such a waiver is warranted. The setbacks listed in the bylaw are first 500 meters from another cannabis retail sales location, second 300 meters from a school, childcare facility, or recreation facility such as the Koldale Arena, third 100 meters from a provincial medical facility, which is to say a hospital and not a privately owned doctor's office, fourth 100 meters from a liquor store, and fifth 100 meters from a municipal reserve parcel. Staff would note that the proposed location is not in compliance with the restrictions requiring that these types of facilities be located 500 meters from another cannabis retail sales facility, as the facility approved in April is located approximately 215 meters to the west. So this represents a requested waiver of about 57% of that regulation. Lastly, there was substantial public input involved in the crafting of the regulations, as Council no doubt recalls. The regulations that were ultimately developed closely mirror the feedback provided to Council by Dr. Lisette Elumir, Medical Officer of Health for the South Zone from Alberta Health Services. And in the official communication provided to the town by Dr. Elumir, the issue of the relative density of cannabis retail sales facilities in terms of their overall impact on public health is represented as a significant reason for the suggested restrictions that were provided. So on this basis, it is the opinion of administration that a 50% waiver of the 500-meter setback between cannabis retail sales facilities, as is proposed, represents a relatively consequential waiver request. A few notes on the bylaw itself as it's proposed. So first, it mirrors in form and substance the bylaw provided for the previous DC rezoning to accommodate the type of use. It provides for all the uses of the commercial C1 zoning. So if the use is in place and then wants to shift or partially shift to something like a retail store, rezoning hearing is not expressly required. Again, this is simply about being simpler and less costly for business owners and more efficient for staff. Second, it does provide for staff to make a determination on the development permit for the application, given that the use has fundamentally been approved, if in fact rezoning is granted. And again, this is about, the reason for this is that it's cheaper and faster and more efficient than requiring another presentation to council to cover what is largely similar issues. And then third, just as a reminder, both the council and interested members of the public, recognizing that cannabis legalization continues to be a complicated topic, I'll note that what we're looking at here is first reading of the bylaw. And with that said, recognizing that the use proposed is regulated within the land use bylaw, it's not strictly prohibited, and out of respect for the purposes of public hearings and the opportunity for open discourse that's provided with respect to all planning bylaws, including this one, and in alignment with the Municipal Government Acts, staff's recommendation is for granting a first reading of the bylaw. By doing so, we provide the landowners, the applicants, and community members both in favor and opposed to the application, or even those that are just curious, to be provided with the opportunity to speak to the issue. So with that, staff's recommendation on the subject, as is provided in the staff report, is for approval of first reading and to set for a public hearing at the June 14th meeting at 5:15 p.m.
Okay. Thank you, Cam. Are you ready for questions now?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. Councillor Chapman had his hand up. Were you making a question? Councillor
I,
Chapman?
thank you, Worship. I'll let Councillor Avery go first. He had.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. I think something important that's been missed in this, Cam, is a kitty corner to this is something we've been working on very hard, is our partnership with the Palisha School Division. Our fire hall is a school. It is right across the street from a school. Hence, I don't know why we're even looking at this as a location for a distribution of a marijuana store within our municipality. I'm not against business, but this location, being it's right across from a school, is not the right location. Thank you.
Fair enough. Just to address that point, Councillor Abbey, so we did not interpret the fire hall as being a school. It's certainly open to that interpretation, certainly not an unreasonable point of view on the subject. So I'll let council discuss that. As far as whether or not we're talking about it because application was made. Application can be made to put these types of facilities anywhere. And as long as the fee is paid and the request is made, staff is not in a position to deny people the opportunity to speak to council with respect to these types of things. It simply requires a waiver, and that's up to them to make that application and to make council see their point of view on that. But with respect to your point about the fire hall, absolutely perfectly reasonable point of view.
Okay, Councillor Chapman, would you like to speak or question?
Yeah, thank you, Worship. And just maybe as a follow-up to Councillor Avery, I'd like to consider that we, in fact, I'll make a motion and we can discuss that. I'll make a motion that we not go ahead with first reading. And so this is something that's kind of I've struggled with as well, but I think in all fairness to the whole process is that we have already given direct control over to another location, which already is contradicts the our land use bylaw in terms of number one, which is 500 meters from another location. And also number three is something that we need to address as well, because the medical profession has already addressed council with this issue and has written a letter. And I think as far as number three is concerned as well, we need to also play reference to Alberta Health Services standards for these type of premises. The other thing was we need to stay strong on what our bylaws were created to do for us. And with that, I'll put that motion on the floor to not go for first reading.
Okay, we have a motion by Councillor Chapman. Any discussion? Councillor Holm?
Thank you, Worship. I kind of agree with this one. This one takes me a little bit by surprise that it was only a short time ago the application to subdivide and change this lot into 4 separate record or commercial zoning was just brought up to municipal planning a short time ago. And at that time, there was no comments about direct control. So this kind of hits me by a bit of surprise that now we're going to have 3 other lots on that particular parcel that may actually be influenced as what can actually go in there if this were to go forward with a cannabis retail, because all of a sudden now we can't have any daycares or anything else like that, or anything that would conflict with it. So I have a great deal of problems with this one.
Okay, thank you. Then I'll just, I agree that staff are doing their obligatory duties and requirements by bringing this forward, and I commend them for doing that. And I hold no malice to them for doing their job, so that's awesome. But I really do support comments already made, particularly with the, the last public hearing and the concerns raised with Cannabis Clinic people, and even the, the reminder that we do have, a quasi kind of a school setting right across the street through the fire academy and that's subject to interpretation, albeit, but, I would support the Councillor Chapman's motion as well. So any other discussion? Okay, so we have a motion by Councillor Chapman to refuse first reading. And is there any other discussion? I see none, so I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, so that is, okay, we have 6 in favor and opposed. We have 1 opposed. Councillor Pauls is opposed. So that record will indicate said vote. And with our thanks to Cameron for presenting. And we have item 7.4, land use rezoning bylaw 817-P-05-21. And it is first reading, and we have Spencer Coyle to introduce that one.
Thank you again, Mayor. I'll just take a moment and get the imagery I'd like to refer to queued up, and then I'll probably share my screen as well. Okay, just as a double check, can everybody see the map up on the screen? Perfect, thank you. So this is a proposed bylaw for the next phase of Parkside Acres, and specifically the northeast, or getting close to the northeast portion of the area structure plan area. As we can see, the subdivided lots in the south where I'm moving the cursor over, and then there's approximately 4 acres of land within the area shown in the mustard yellow and the purple areas that are the subject of this evening's presentation on the first reading bylaw. So on the left-hand side, that is proposed to go to from urban reserve to residential multi-unit, which has specifically been noted by the applicant as townhouse, but multi-unit is just simply multi-unit for the purposes of the zoning that the proposal would be bringing forward at this time. And then on the east side, it's a continuation of the R1C residential starter lots that would make up the rest of the area to be zoned. And just a quick note, streets and lanes are included in that zoning, but as I've mentioned to council in the past, those areas that become streets and lanes don't have any zoning carried forward on them because they just become public right of way. But for the purposes of this evening's discussion, an approximate 2.772 acre piece of property is proposed to be zoned to residential multi-unit, and a 1.76 acre portion of the property is proposed to be rezoned to residential starter lot. I did want to make reference quickly to the conceptual map in the area structure plan. For the most part, other than the specifics of the road layout, which typically aren't discussed in a rezoning context, the application brought forward is consistent with what is envisioned for that portion of the community. There is one small area that I'm mousing over now in the southwest of the proposed residential multi-unit zoning area that had previously been noted as going to low density residential. Given the relatively small portion of the land that was shown in the conceptual map to go to residential low density as compared to the proposal now, which would be that this small portion here be included in the multi-unit zoning. Given that the size of it and the fact that it provides more favorable geometry for that R2 proposal, it wouldn't be a stretch to say that that's not outside of the conceptual nature or the intent of the area structure plan as it is today, which is why at this time there's been no recommendation to amend the area structure plan to reflect that very small change. With that, I will, sorry, I'm just shifting between screens here. With that, I'll conclude my comments and with the recommendation that council consider first reading, passing the bylaw for first reading and setting the public hearing as per the staff report. I have no further comments at this time, and I'm happy to answer any questions council may have.
Okay, thank you, Spencer. And if you can end share screen so I can see everybody, and that would be great. And okay, thank you. And then any questions through the administration on this bylaw? Councillor Chapman?
Yeah, thank you, Worship, and through to Spencer, thank you so much for your presentation. My only question is, this doesn't adjust or affect the area structure plan for that whole area, does it?
Through the chair to Councillor Chapman, no, other than the one very small area that would be about the size of two single family lots that is proposed to be incorporated into the multi-unit area, there is no other changes that would be considered significant beyond that one singular request for a change to that portion of the subject area.
Okay. And so I know that maybe some of the more finesse things are going to be forthcoming down the road, but it looks like the carriageway, the roadway are more in conformance with the rest of the roads within the town of Coaldale, and they won't be in the similar width and that as the earlier parts of that subdivision. Is that correct?
Thank you, Chair. Excellent question. The response to that would be the road as shown. And again, this is outside of the typical discussion that we would have as a part of zoning, but the road is shown at 16 meters in width, which would include parking on both sides and driving lanes. We can double check that against what's been approved in the area structure plan and have a more detailed discussion on that part of things. Typically that would occur either in the public hearing or at the subdivision stage.
Yeah, my question is all set with the process, I know, but I just wanted to maybe flag that as maybe a note for how it's processed and that, because I think the first social engineering experiment on narrow roadways and that wasn't necessarily successful, so I wouldn't want to repeat it. So that's just me. Any other questions? Councillor Chapman?
Thank you, Worship. It's not just you. I support your position as well. It's something that we've had to live up with ever since that development occurred, is narrow streets. So maybe that might be a must rather than a must do in terms of construction.
Okay, so we have an opportunity to do first reading, or Councillor Holm?
First reading.
And Councillor Holm sponsors first reading of the bylaw with the prescribed public hearing date of June 14th at 5:30. So any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? That's unanimous then. Then maybe, thank you, Spencer. What I'd like to perhaps do is to go back to 7.3, and we probably handled that just a little bit unconventionally, which we probably could have just got first reading on the table and defeated it. But I think what we did was might pass muster anyway, the intent can, but with that, I wonder if there's any recommendation, any thoughts of Cameron, whether or not there be, since we didn't do first reading, should we have a motion to refund the cost of this application to the applicants and that? Cameron, were you able to comment, or Spencer, you're there, or whatever?
Thank you, Mayor Greg. I can certainly comment. Certainly something with respect to that would be open for consideration. Generally speaking, while I don't think, and Spencer can correct me if I'm wrong, but while I don't think it's specifically stated, I would suggest that the majority of the application fee with respect to a zoning hearing with a rezoning application has to do with the costs associated with the public hearing, both from an advertising as well as a staff man-hour standpoint. So it wouldn't be an unreasonable thing necessarily to refund all or a portion of the application fee, but that would be entirely up to council's discretion.
Councillor Simpson, I see your hand. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. Can you remind me how much the development fee is again?
1,000, I believe is.
Yes,
what-
it's $1,000. That's right.
Okay, it was just a comment that I wanted to make. And Councillor Holm?
I think that your comment is an excellent one, Mayor Craig, and I would move that we refund the application fee on this one.
The full amount or an amount that,
Full amount,
okay.
the full amount.
So we have that motion by Councillor Holm. Any discussion? I see none. I'm ready to call the question, so I will. All in favor? Well, Councillor Avery, did you have a comment? Oh, okay, good. Okay, all right. So 1, 2, 3, all in favor? Okay, I think we have all 7 of us, so that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Thanks for indulging me on that.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
And then we have item 8.1, and we have Spencer to introduce the topic of traffic calming requests and proposed pilot project.
Yes, thank you again, Mayor. I'm back for more. I'm going to share my screen again, and hopefully this works. I have a brief presentation for council on this topic. Just need a moment to set up here. Now,
I see your PowerPoint.
Wonderful. And you see the actual presentation, not the presenter view.
Yeah, looks like
Okay,
it's suitable for public consumption.
That's excellent. Thank you. So as you've already mentioned, this is an item for proposed traffic calming pilot program. Recently, we've received requests for traffic calming from areas in the community, such as Cottonwood Drive, the area between 24th Street and Fairway Drive, and a specific portion of 16th Avenue. This is not uncommon, and it's something that's been occurring since I started with the town, and very likely since well before I've been with Koldale. And typically these types of proposals or requests for a change in the network or more enforcement or what have you have been dealt with on very much an ad hoc basis. So as one of us. And the goal of this proposal is to bring a more formalized and consistent approach to how staff is able to deal with these requests and provide more of an understanding to the community and to council as to how and why and where certain things may or may not work and what we might be looking at when we do receive these requests. So effectively to provide more consistency from this point forward. First though, what is traffic calming? Because it might mean different things to different people. So going right to the source, the Transportation Association of Canada, who publishes a traffic calming guide for any municipality in the country that wishes to make use of it. They define traffic calming as the combination of mainly physical measures that reduce the negative effects of motor vehicle use, alter driver behavior, and improve conditions for non-motorized street users. So effectively, it's anything that's focused on making non-motorized users feel safer and more comfortable in the streets that we share with vehicles. In terms of a suggested process, as I've already mentioned, up to this point, it's very much been a case-by-case, one-off basis that we've dealt with these types of requests in the past. The Transportation Association of Canada provides a comprehensive and inclusive recommendation for a 5-phase or a 5-stage process that includes many smaller steps, but it's always a good place to start when the national body that represents best practices provides a framework within which we can build our own program. So very briefly, the 5 stages are shown on the screen now. They go from initiation to development to approval to implementation and then finally evaluation. So a very comprehensive, inclusive, robust process. The non-italicized text under each column is, or each column represents a broad brushstrokes of what the smaller steps might be. So we have everything from receiving a request to, in the next stage, identifying and informing stakeholders of what the next actions might be, gauging community support for any actions or changes to the built environment that might be considered desirable from a traffic calming perspective. And then one of the more salient points in this bigger process is, after putting a preferred solution in place, actually monitoring and evaluating that solution to see if it's effective, and if not, then there is actually a recommendation to remove traffic calming measures that are found to be ineffective. So it really is a holistic, full type of process that goes from start to finish. Now, the reason that I've put emphasis on that is that we can use that process that TAC has provided to any community who wishes to take that on and initiate a pilot process, a pilot project for Coaldale that generally mirrors that process that the Transportation Association has provided and recommended. Specific elements of that process can be borrowed from larger municipalities with more well-developed and actionable policies and processes. Two in particular, you could find really any number of very well-developed and actionable traffic calming policies across Canada, but two that stand out from my perspective would be Windsor and Maple Ridge, and they include more finite elements such as thresholds for different parts of the process, thresholds being a check-in with the localized part of the community where a traffic calming request has been made, and a certain number of residents in that area having to agree that, first of all, there is an issue, and second, what they would like to do about that. So instead of putting a traffic calming measure in place and having some local frustration around why that traffic calming is in front of a particular property or debating whether or not it works, it's a much more inclusive process in terms of getting everybody on the same page with what's being done and why. Now, ultimately, in terms of next steps, staff has already prepared a draft public participation plan that can be used for the areas we've already received requests for in the recent past. After that, we do have some data available through our speed feedback signs that are rotated locations throughout the community. And we also have a couple of other cost-effective measures we can use to collect real-time speed data from vehicles in the areas that we've received requests on. So should council find merit in the program, I really want to emphasize that it's a pilot program. So there would be a need for on-the-fly learning and tweaks to that pilot process as we go. And eventually, once we've received enough requests and shown council the plans that we intend to put in place, how we intend to meet with the community or the localized parts of the community on these different requests, and then put potential solutions in place, monitor those solutions, really go through each step in the TAC recommended stages of traffic calming. So once we do those types of things enough, that will help to inform a much more robust, capable policy than we would be able to produce today, having not run the broader process that TAC recommends up to this point. And with that, I know it was fairly broad brushstrokes, but I conclude with those remarks, and I'm certainly happy to answer any questions council may have.
Okay, thank you, Spencer. I guess maybe I'll start with one thought, like your proposal kind of speaks to maybe new initiatives or, you know, potentially for traffic calming. And I just wonder if that would be more of a dynamic process, like, you know, just for example, like 18th Avenue, where we have speed table kind of things there, would this kind of a process actually, you know, be able to be flexible enough to revisit some of the other measures and that to see if those are still applicable or proper, because, you know, over time, certain areas will have different changes in traffic, and, you know, once you know, what used to be a appropriate method of calming might be needing changing in that. So I just wonder if the process would take in that kind of consideration as well.
Yes, certainly. Excellent question, Mr. Chair. And the answer to that would be, as growth and change occurs in the network anywhere over time, there's a need to revisit what's in place today as compared to how it might function when there's a different type of road cross section in place, whether it's new sidewalks or pathways or a change in speed limit. So not only would this pilot process and pilot program be able to fit within new requests, but we could certainly start up an ongoing monitoring program for all of the areas in town that do have traffic calming measures in place already.
Anybody else would like to direct a question or a comment? So you're looking for just receive just for information at this point in time, because we have something coming on June the 14th for the public engagement piece, is that right?
Well, thank you for asking that question on clarification. I think ideally what staff would like is an approval to initiate the pilot program, the next step of which would be bringing back a proposed public participation plan for the 3 areas that we have requests on right now.
Okay, Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Worship. If we're proceeding with this pilot process, are we going to need a budget for that?
Through the chair to Councillor Chapman, we would bring potential budget numbers back as a part of the potential solution for each of the areas in question. And that is an excellent point. A lot of larger communities that do have well-developed traffic calming policies and programs set aside a certain amount each year, knowing that they can estimate how much money might be involved with traffic calming requests on a year-over-year basis. At this point in time, we don't have a good understanding of that in town. So this pilot project would also help to inform what kind of budget dollars we might want to start setting aside on a year-over-year basis. But at this point in time, it would have to be at the end of each area being investigated as a potential solution is identified. We'd have to bring that back to council for consideration of any budget dollars that would be tied to it at that time.
And how long is this pilot project for? You might have mentioned it.
I only really spoke generally to it, again, through the chair to Councillor Chapman. Another excellent question. So in that regard, we have 3 on the table right now. So we have Cottonwood Drive, basically the entire thing in terms of feedback on what we can do there. We have a stretch between 24th and Fairway Drive, and then we have a small portion of 16th Avenue as the areas of focus. So if by the end of those 3 areas, we feel that we have a good understanding of what's going to work and what isn't, we could call that the end of the pilot, which would probably take until the fall of this year, if not a little bit later. But if we know that we still need to learn a little bit more about what to tweak and what to change to make this a contextually appropriate process for Coaldale, then we'll have to learn as we go and see how comfortable council and staff are in terms of what that looks like as we get further down the path.
Just one final question through Spencer, if I may. Will you be including our community peace officers in that process?
Yes, thank you very much for that question. Through the chair there, Councillor Chapman, we have a roster of the internal staff or departments who would be involved in this process, and it ranges from operations to emergency services to our CPOs to finance, because every one of them plays a part in how this can work.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think this is a great initiative, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the outcome comes and how we get there. And so with that, I'll make the motion to approve it.
Okay, Councillor Simpson moves that council approve the initiation of the traffic calming pilot process. Any discussion? I see none. I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, and that's unanimous as well. 7 in favor. Thank you very much, Spencer. And then we have 8.2, Chinook Arch System Agreement introduced by Kyle Beauchamp. Kyle, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks and good evening again. So we have updated agreements between the Town of Coaldale and the Chinook Arch Library Board for council's review. So essentially, later in 2020, the Alberta government changed essentially the population count for the methodology for that in maintaining the populations for municipalities within Alberta. They're no longer using various census data from Alberta Municipal Affairs. Rather, the Treasury Board is deciding or producing population estimates year to year based on their data. With that change in population information, it's essentially changed how many of these boards and whatnot will be billing municipalities such as the town of Coaldale. With that change, the agreement needs to be updated at the request of the Chinook Arch Library Board. Again, there isn't, this change doesn't have a significant impact on the town of Coaldale as far as our operational budget or the agreement with the Chinook Arch. This is more just a legality measure to comply with the new standards that the Alberta government is using for population counts. With that being said, I will kind of turn it back to council if there's any questions on this measure.
Thank you, Kyle. Is there any questions through the administration with regard to this? Seems relatively straightforward. Is there anybody care to move the recommendation? Councillor Chapman, Councillor Lloyd, I saw your hand go up. You're moving the recommendation, Councillor Lloyd? Okay. And Councillor Chapman, you want to speak to anything? Okay, so we have the motion on the floor by Councillor Lloyd. I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, and that's 7 in favor, so that's carried unanimously. And then we have item 9.1.
Excuse me, Your Worship.
Go ahead, Roger.
I'm wondering if we shouldn't go to 9.2 to allow Mr. Beauchamp to end his evening a little bit early. I don't know whether he's on anything else in the closed session or not, because this could take a little bit longer.
Okay, with this seems reasonable. If then with council's permission, then we'll use that latitude to juggle the agenda, and we'll let Kyle. Sorry, Cindy, about upsetting the stage there. I know you were anxious to address us, so now you got a couple more minutes to work on that. So Kyle, without further ado, 9.2 then, the financial update.
Just ask for just 1 minute here just to get that ready here for the council. I just have to pull that up. Okay, sorry about that. So council, you do have a financial update for the period ending March 31st, 2021. So as previously, what we've done in previous years is present council with quarterly financial updates on the operating and the capital budget for the town of Coaldale. So at the first little bit here, you will see the financial statement of operations, which details the revenue expenses for the town of Coaldale. We do have the budget for the year with the actual at May 31st compared to the remaining budgets. So as you'll kind of see, we've only been 3 months in here, so a lot of these budget items have not yet occurred. For example, we haven't had any collection of property taxes yet for obvious reasons. So there isn't any significant items of note here that require attention or comments from council right now from administrative perspective. Going forward, we do have a capital budget schedule. So what we've done is taken the capital projects that have not yet been completed, and we've detailed the original budget, any budget amendments from council, followed by the cost year to date. We do have some projects going back from 2018. And so we do have the accumulated cost for the year. So again, as far as administration, there isn't any items of need that we need specifically motions or directions from council on this information. But again, we are presenting this as a regular financial update to council. However, if there is any specific items of note that council would like to discuss or has any questions, I'd be happy to entertain those.
Okay, thank you, Kyle. Any questions through to Kyle on this matter? It's kind of early in the year, so. All right, Councillor Holm.
I'd move Kyle's report here for information.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? I see none. I'll call the question. All in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you very much, Kyle. Okay, now Cindy, you're up for the community grant presentation.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm pleased to come before you tonight in regards to the community grant applications. This report is to provide council with the eligible 2021 applications received for the Town of Koldale Community Grant, and to provide council with some recommendations and to ask that they make a final decision on the awarding of funds to the various community projects. This is the 5th year that the Town of Koldale Community Grant Initiative has accepted applications for eligible community projects. In the past 4 years, the community grant funding has contributed over $146,000 to worthy projects. This year, $35,000 of available funds could be allocated to eligible projects from the community grant funding stream. This year, 12 eligible applications were received with a requested funding amount totaling $78,666. The Town of Koldale Community Grant Evaluation Committee has reviewed all applications based on all eligibility criteria, and all of that criteria is directly in the community grant application form, which is in your packages there. And based on that, 12 applications were deemed eligible, either in full or in part, with a requested funding amount totaling that $78,666. The evaluation committee respectfully presents to council the 2021 community grant application summary for review. And I'd just like to make one note before I take any questions, if there are any, or hear your decisions. Just as of note, the 2021 community grant is oversubscribed, and as such, not all projects can receive full or partial funding. So I will entertain any questions or carry on from there.
Okay, thank you, Cindy. Are there questions of Cindy by members of council? I just note that I really appreciate all the submissions. There's lots of interesting submissions that were made and whatnot. And like you say, when you have 78,666 worth of requests and only 35,000, then that kind of puts the pressure on for who gets what. I notice, yeah, so any members of council want to speak on any particular matter? So you did prepare a table that sort of showed which ones kind of fit. The one, what you had on your screen showed the total amount requested and that, and then you had a different table that sort of had a recommendation on.
Right. So again, based on the criteria as outlined in the application form, the review committee went through each of the grant applications very, very carefully and evaluated each one. And then those, the recommendations that are provided there are based off of that, looking at all of the criteria and sort of evaluating each application.
Councillor Simpson and then Councillor Chapman after her.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just going through your application summary, I just wanted to say thank you. There was a lot of questions I had right from the get-go, and most of them were answered there. So I just appreciate that, and I love to see that going forward and every year having that, because we always have those several questions. Who got what last year and stuff. So I really, really appreciate that, because literally every question I had was answered there. So I appreciate that.
Okay.
Councillor Chapman, you're on deck.
Thank you, Worship. And through to Cindy, I echo Councillor Simpson's comments and your comment, Cindy, about the application process this year being oversubscribed. Is this the full exhausted or exhaustive list of applicants?
We did have one other one that we thought it was more, it didn't quite meet all of the eligibility. So I will be speaking to this applicant, and we've got options for this application for next year if they want to pursue grant funding. So in total, we did receive a total of 13.
Okay.
You're on mute there, Mayor.
So then, Cindy, you have a couple of ones that are on this list that's on our screen right now that are, can you speak to the couple of the ones that are kind of already have internal funding that they'll actually get money, but not necessarily from this funding source?
Yes, let me just, so let's see, going down here. So the Coaldale and District Firefighter Association, this is, as noted, they have received funding in previous years, and they provide, this is only a small portion of the money that they are going to be putting towards their project, the amount that they're requesting there. So they have got other funding. The Koldale Granite Club, as noted there, the club itself will be covering 50% of the cost of the chairs. So they have got half of the funding coming from another source. Alberta Healthy, or Coldale Healthy Communities Initiative, again, they've got another grant for $4,000 as well. So half of what they're asking for, half of their total projected project cost. The Koldale Minor Hockey and the Kate Andrews High School Collaborative Project. Minor Hockey is putting in, I believe it is $6,000 towards the project itself. And then, of course, the students from Kate Andrews High School are donating or volunteering their time. The Coaldale Pickleball Club, let's see here. They were providing money from their club as well. And I think, Spartans Football, they were also providing, I believe it was $1,200 from their own funding to go towards the project. Did that answer your question, Mayor?
Yeah, and then like the soccer nets for Eastview Park, is that internally funded money?
Yeah, so on that particular one, the assets, the nets themselves become town property. So we have got in our rec budget, we do have money to cover that. So we thought that that would be, would be an opportunity to use budgeted funds instead of using money from the grant stream.
So some of these money requests are actually not necessarily declined. You're just getting, some of them are getting funding from an alternate source.
Some of them are, yes, some of them are not. Yeah.
Okay. All right, Councillor Simpson.
Thank you. So with the recommended funding that you had said to us, I wonder if we should go through a little bit of like why each one, and because that report isn't up on there for the residents. And I do have a question about the Spartans football. Do we have a portable light we could lend them that would be big enough? Like they're usually like a trailer or anything for this season?
I'm not 100% sure. I know for other events we rent one. So I'm not sure if I don't know, Russ, if you're on board, I don't know if you would have an answer to that.
Thanks, Your Worship, to the question from Councillor Simpson. So not that I'm aware of. There are other options, though, I guess, that are out there. There's the solar lights that you can get from UFA for $150 and things like that. That's a discussion we kind of had to plan if council chooses to go with these recommendations. We certainly talked about having conversations with some of the groups that haven't been recommended here. There are some other options that quite possibly they haven't thought of. And I mean, options, we're even looking at some of our parks and some of the issues we're dealing with elsewhere that are so substantially less than doing something that's tied in permanently.
Okay. Councillor Avery.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just the one I've got a question on is the arena dressing room enhancement. How haven't we put budget money aside the last few years to redo these dressing rooms? So why are the groups now having to redo them again just a few years after they were done?
Russ, did you want to take this one?
Yeah,
or
certainly I can take that. So maybe we didn't, in hindsight, maybe we didn't totally describe that project exactly how it is. What's going on here is they're actually taking a couple of the dressing rooms that are newer dressing rooms and doing something similar to what the Copperheads have done in the past, and they're enhancing those dressing rooms to make them more usable for the hockey teams, putting in hockey stalls. And part of the program is also educational. In fact, that they're actually teaming up with the high school shop group to do that. They've done it in other communities, and they'd heard about that similar program. So this is enhancing our asset that currently exists. It's not rehabbing a dressing room that needs those rehabs. We've definitely applied our services and costs. In fact, just recently updated two dressing rooms just last year. So this is a completely different asset and taking it a little further.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Councillor Avery? Councillor Chapman, are you wanting to speak?
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Through to Cindy, just with regards to the Chamber of Commerce, I appreciate their initiative and their leadership here. And I'm just wondering about the furniture, whether these were initiatives already set out by the town, and or is this an initiative that the Chamber would be spearheading and taking initiative even on further projects in the future?
Oh, that's a good question. I believe the Chamber was spearheading it. and they would be looking to purchasing the furniture, storing it, renting it, or loaning it out as well. I don't know if I'm answering your question. I'm just trying to remember the application itself.
So they aren't, this isn't permanent furniture for downtown sort of a thing.
No, no. My understanding was it would be a furniture that could be loaned or rented out to a business to put in front of their storefront, basically, for use by the community. So.
I think Spencer, maybe you want to add something to that?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through to Councillor Chapman's question. Thank you for that. I think from what I understand of the project, it was based on or focused on purchasing movable furniture, so cafe style chairs and tables. There's a lot of research and other case studies in really, you name a successful Main Street or downtown area in North America, and they'll all have a variety of movable furniture. It's typically needs to be fairly robust, which is part of the reason for the price tag as far as I understand, but I do believe Cindy got the part accurate in terms of the chamber being the purchasers and the stewards of the chairs and tables, and then businesses could request to have them in front of their shop or on one of the curb extensions or something like that.
So with your work on Main Street, do you know if there's a lot of demand for, like, already you've spoken to the successful use now, but you've been actively involved with Main Street people and that?
Certainly, excellent question, Mr. Chair. I think the response there would actually be that, sorry, I have a little visitor here. Sorry about that. The response to that would be, we don't know if there's demand until we put the chairs and tables in place. These are things that you really don't know what is going to come of it until you put them in place. However, I would like to bookend that by saying that of the variety of case studies that I'm aware of, when they do put them in place, people do end up using them because it's a feature that isn't there now, but there is a really human connection with the ability to adjust how you're sitting and where you're sitting. So my estimation would be that they would be well used if they were to be put in place.
Councillor Roma, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just, thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I don't hear very well. I just wanted to say that Oasis have put a table and then chairs in front of their place on the corner there, and it's kind of cool. It's really neat to be able to sit out there and have ice cream.
All right, now Councillor Roma.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do notice on our staff report that this one was not necessarily recommended. And I agree with that. I think it's a wonderful idea, but I do believe that individual businesses need to have buy-in and need to do this themselves. That I think this is another one of those ones that if we do it, they will come. Well, let's let the businesses show that this is something that they want. I'm not sure that that's, I know the chamber tries to speak for all businesses, but I would just as soon see individual businesses put in an application for something like this rather than something that's kind of dropped on top of a business that may or may not want it.
Okay. All right, any further questions? Councillor Avery.
So is this an initiative from the chamber, or is this an initiative from the town? Like hearing the conversation is not quite clear. This furniture is something the town is wanting, or is it something the chamber is wanting? Did we ask to partner? How is that working?
Yeah, I can jump in there. Thanks for the question. So we've been working with the chamber. One of the things we've been working on for the past little while now is to try to sort of further develop the town's relationship with the chamber and try to find ways to work together on initiatives. So this is an initiative that, when we were going through our Main Street design and those various processes, as Spencer alluded, there's quite a bit of research that suggests this type of thing is successful in other municipalities. So it's something we talked to the chamber about, and then they in turn got excited about as an opportunity and wanted to partner with the town on that. So they would The idea fundamentally being that this is something that would develop over time, and the chamber could manage the day-to-day affairs of keeping track of and taking care of and placing and that sort of thing, and just be part of the general Main Street development in conjunction with them.
All right. So, council. Councillor Home.
Thank you, Worship. Like Councillor Avery earlier, trying to get us to go in the right direction here. Can we do you want us to go through each one of these individually from the top to the bottom and go through and vote yes or no to each one? Or would you like us to just make a motion right now on the staff's recommendation?
Well, personally, I'd rather it be your second choice, but as council's prerogative on how they want to address it.
Okay, so I would be willing to make that motion that we follow the staff's recommendation, which would be as follows, that 100% of the requests for the scouts be covered. The Koldale Accessibility Working Group not be covered. Coaldale Chamber of Commerce not be covered. Coaldale District Firefighters Association be covered to $7,977. The Coaldale Granite Club's application be covered at $6,000. AHS Coaldale Healthy Community Initiatives be covered at $4,000. Coaldale Minor Hockey Association and Kate Andrews High School for the dressing rooms be covered at $10,000. Coaldale Pickleball Club not be covered. Coaldale Senior Advisory Committee be covered to $2,573. Jenny Emery Elementary School Parent Council not be covered. Kinsman Club of Coaldale for the soccer nets not be covered. Spartans football for the installation of lights not be covered. So the total dollars to be covered is $35,000. That's my motion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Home. And then would it be friendly on your motion to direct the administration to communicate appropriately with all the successful and unsuccessful applicants to, in some cases further discuss other options and whatnot as well?
Please, thank you.
And I think Councillor Simpson, you had your hand go up.
You said exactly what I wanted to say. Thanks.
Okay. Any other discussion? Councillor Chapman? There you go.
Yeah, thank you. Just really quick that I want to thank all the applicants and in particular some of the new clubs, for example, the pickleball club, who are brand new. So hopefully that they can apply next year again.
Well, and Councillor Avery, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm just wondering how many years in a row is an organization going to be awarded money? Like we have, this is a lot of years in a row, a lot of the same applications, and in order to keep our community vibrant and growing, and those wanting to continue to give back, we seem to give the same clubs money every year continuously with this fund.
Currently in the application itself, basically all it says is that groups can apply yearly as long as their final report with receipts and acknowledgement of where the money was spent does come in before the next application is received for the following year. That is something we could look into to change some wording there.
that's sort of where I'm going with this too, except, and having said that the one of the clubs that was named is brand new, and this would be their first full year of operation.
Okay.
Well, it does seem that the people that brought forward these recommendations did probably, you know, I hope, it seems that they put the ones that are getting hopefully funding, you know, on a meritorious kind of a basis and worthy, not to say that any are necessarily had any less merit, but you know, some of them simply didn't necessarily qualify as you know, wages and different other things that would disqualify it kind of. So, and but I agree that, you know, there should be some merit given to, you know, whether or not somebody's been able to apply year after year after year. But I guess that means that they're out there doing good work and they're making the community a better place too, I guess, if they're busy asking for money and improving things. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. So we have Councillor Holmes' motion, and so it is read to award as listed there, and then to further communicate with all the applicants. And not, you know, that doesn't necessarily mean simply stopping at yes or no. It means also dialoguing with, you know, as Russ and Cindy said, about different lighting options and other things that they might not have considered in their process. So, any other discussion? Yeah, I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, so we have that. Any opposed? And we have Councillor Chapman and Councillor Avery opposed, and then the others are in favor. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. And then Councillor Chapman, your item number 10 is on deck.
Yeah, thank you, Worship, and through to Council. Just wanted to update you quickly on mayors and reeves. They've been really busy the last number of months, and I think the three items that I'm going to bring up tonight will have some relevance. The number one is the referendum questions for the municipal election. There was some questions regarding what kinds of questions would be on the ballot coming up this fall. And the mayors and reeves were concerned that that a number of referendum questions that could be on the ballot have not been publicly addressed by government. And so the public may not have really any idea as to what they're expected to answer at the municipal election balloting stations. And further to that, there might be some confusion as to if this is a municipal direction or a provincial direction. Number two, on EMS, there's been lots and lots of conversations over many meetings about EMS and the focus on decentralizing 911 dispatch in Alberta. And again, further concerns were again pointed to the response times to emergency 911 calls. So as a follow to that, a number of municipalities had experienced long delays, and these delays are obviously unacceptable. And I recognize the point with the Assistant Deputy Minister at our last meeting that an example of the code reds that we have experienced in Coaldale alone is not what we signed up for. So the Ministry of Health is really interested in data, and I pointed out that the town of Coaldale has at least 10 years of recorded data pertaining to our EMS first responders work, plus the number of code reds that we encounter. The third item I'd like to just speak quickly to is policing. And that's with this Fair Deal panel discussion around Alberta with regarding to provincial police force issue. The National Police Federation has been attending these meetings, and the National Police Federation are arm or extended arm of the RCMP in Canada. And so they've become more of an advocacy group and really have been working hard to advocate for the role of the work of the RCMP in Alberta. So there is a large satisfaction and sentiment amongst member municipalities to keep the RCMP and their satisfaction with the work and cost of policing. And of course, many municipalities recognize the models of policing as documented in other jurisdictions like Ontario and Quebec may not be affordable here in Alberta. So we as a town of Coaldale are not taking any sides in supporting a provincially owned model. And we, of course, we're only 5 years into an agreement with the RCMP and certainly value what they have brought to Coaldale. So through my observations, I understand that the National Police Federation, as an advocate, is currently defending and supporting the Alberta to retain its status and agreement with the RCMP. And in consultation with Mayor Kim Craig, I would like to ask that council write a letter to the National Police Federation. And it is our hope that they too will support our case for removing the new entrance clause and bring the town of Coaldale into an equal status with all other municipalities in Canada under the 70-30 agreement. That concludes my report. And if you want a motion for that letter, I could do that as well.
Okay. Are there any questions of Councillor Chapman? Councillor Holm?
Thank you, Worship. I'm very confused, Councillor Chapman, by your comments here. First, you write in your report that Koldale is not taking any sides in terms of support for the provincially owned model, or not supporting the provincially owned model. And now you're asking by motion that we write a letter in support of the RCMP. So what exactly is it that we're supporting here? Are you in favor or not? Or is Koldale in favor or not? I'm very confused with what you're asking here.
Well, thank you very much for the question, Councillor Holm. The role that Koldale plays is that we have an agreement with the RCMP, and with that, we are not taking any sides with supporting a provincially owned model, that we are here in an agreement with the RCMP and value what they have brought to Koldale.
So what you're actually saying is we are against the provincial model of having our own, the province having their own police force, and we are in totally support of the RCMP. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. We've entered this agreement for a reason, and I don't see us moving away from that in the time being. I think that that's really what we're here for, and we're simply asking that the National Police Federation support our advocacy for the 70-30 agreement. That's the important part.
So we are taking sides here. We are in support of the RCMP. Is that correct? Because I am totally in favor of that motion, but I'm not in favor of a motion that we're not going to take sides.
There is no motion to take sides, and so with that, the motion is to ask for support, and that'd be the main reason for this this motion.
So I think what Councillor Holmes getting at, maybe Councillor Chapman, is sort of, to expand maybe your, if you might consider it friendly, to include the request for them to support us in our quest to get a fair and equitable funding relationship with our municipal policing agreement, and also stating our support on the on the RCMP as the preferred model of policing in Alberta. Is that what you're kind of indicating, Councillor Holm?
That's correct.
All right. Just.
Well, absolutely, and I guess the point being is that in any public setting is that we're not taking sides with the province on a provincial police force. So we're here to support the force that we've already have an agreement with, and that's the important thing.
Councillor Avery.
Thank you, Worship. So I think there's two parts in your motion, Bill. So I agree, we support the RCMP. The RCMP are a good police force within our province. But why are we going back into this 70-30? We want the same as every other municipality. We've already gone to court. We've already been told, no, you're not going to get it. So let's just be clear. Let's just say we're in support of the continuation of the RCMP within the province of Alberta to police our town and surrounding communities.
Yeah, I think the intention was really as more of a final straw. I know that what you've said is absolutely right. And, if this is, another opportunity for us to get that recognition, let's go for it. I'm not advocating for us to get out of any agreement and to support a provincial police force. I think if there's thinking about pigeonholing me, this is not what this is all about.
Okay, so then maybe we'll divide it a little bit then, or I'm hearing support for a motion to add a letter of support for the RCMP as our preferred police model. And there's actually, I guess, in a timely manner, we got a letter from other communities with a template letter of support that came through just today. So we can be a signatory onto that template and send those letters out to the suggested bodies and whatnot. So perhaps maybe Councillor Chapman, would you be okay with having the motion to start with doing the letter of support for RCMP then, and leave it at that? Or what is your motion? So just state what motion you like to have, and then we can make sure we're clear on what we're doing.
Well, the request was again for to ask the National Police Federation to advocate for us in our agreement with the RCMP. There isn't any, I haven't said anywhere that we are trying to pull out or that we're going to join a provincial police model. If you'd like a separate motion to do that, we will advocate as well for keeping the RCMP in Coaldale and in Alberta. We could do that as well.
Okay, so presently we have a motion from Councillor Chapman to direct that a letter be sent to the National Police Federation in hopes that they would advocate for on behalf of the town of Coaldale for the 70-30 split. Mm-hmm. Okay, so any discussion? All right, I see none. I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, all right. So we have 2 in favor and opposed. Okay, and we have 5 opposed: Councillor Holm, Lloyd, Simpson, Pauls, and Avery. And does anybody care to make a motion to add our support to the letter campaign of supporting our RCMP retention in Alberta? Councillor Avery, any discussion? Okay, call the question. All in favor? Okay, so we have 6 in favor, and then Councillor Lloyd, you're opposed? You're in favor? You're in favor, okay. So we have unanimous approval. All 7 members of council support that motion then. And then the motion to receive Councillor Chapman's report. And I want to thank Councillor Chapman for doing that, because it's very good for council to report on their activities in the community and on their different boards and whatnot. So it's good that he took that initiative, and I applaud that. So a motion to receive his report for information. Councillor Chapman, all in favor? Okay, and that's carried unanimously with our thanks. Thank you very much. Then we have section 11, we have correspondence within that body of information. And how would you like to, Councillor Avery?
Yeah, just one question, Your Worship, on 11.4, the MSI funding allocation. If Kaylin or Kyle could comment, is this the amount of money that we did budget for this year?
Yeah, so the MSI capital allocation is slightly higher than we have budgeted in the past. So that is the good thing. The good news is the MSI operating, which is kind of the kick in the teeth, is significantly lower than we have previously received and previously budgeted. So to provide some context, I believe the letter says it's approximately $66,000 we are receiving. Previous years, we have received anywhere between $235,000 and $265,000. The reason for the decrease is we are kind of getting penalized for doing such a good job, is that for all municipalities under 10,000 people, by municipal affairs calculations, there's an additional pool of so many millions of dollars that are allocated to each municipality. Previously, we were part of that pool in receiving those funding allocations. However, our assessment growth has exceeded the provincial average on a increasing pace over the number of years, which even though we are under 10,000 people, it excludes us from being eligible for this additional funding. So we went from 265 last year down to 66,000 this year, simply due to the fact that our assessment growth is growing higher than the provincial benchmarks. And because of that, we've reached a point where we're no longer eligible. So we do understand that this does pose issues with the budget and whatnot. However, we have identified some areas where we can look at making up this funding. We don't have a final set or proposal yet for council. That's why this has not been further brought back, as analysis on this isn't completed. But that is something that is kind of down the pipe, is unfortunately for the foreseeable future, we're going to be short about 200K from previously expected MSI funding.
Great question, Councillor Avery, and your response. And Councillor Lloyd.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Is there any way we can deal with each one of these separately? I'm looking at 11.1, and this is a huge milestone for us. And is there anybody that can report on that for anybody that's listening? I mean, we all know about it, but just for anybody else that's listening, can we have a report on that? I think that's, like I said, a real milestone for our council.
Well, I agree that, it does kind of bring, some matters to a bit of a head, closes off the idea of an inspection and enrolls us into the municipal accountability program, and which we'll gladly cooperate with. Maybe the administration might comment on the status of where we are with the MAP program, and if we've responded yet, or what the next steps is with that regard to that. Kaylin?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the question. Administration has been in correspondence with Municipal Affairs. We have a 3-hour meeting scheduled with them virtually near the end of June. And in your package there, you'll see an enumerated list of items that they've asked us to provide them in the meantime. So we're working to gather that. I believe at first glance, we have everything that they've asked for. And really all this really is a discussion with them in June over an afternoon to review their thoughts on the quality of each of the documents that we're going to supply them. There's been a lot of discussion about what a municipal accountability program is. It really depends on what their thoughts are on the quality of each of the items that we provide them. And then the timeline from there really is going to depend on the thoroughness of the information that we have in our possession. They make recommendations for any types of improvement. And then we put together a plan to rectify those improvements. So the good news with this whole thing is that they're doing a lot of work for us for free that we would have to otherwise pay a consultant to do. We actually brought in a consultant less than 2 years ago to do this very thing. So we feel like we're very well positioned to do it, to respond to their request in an efficient manner. And there's also been some questions about what about the multi-year element? There's been some discussion about that. We've had some inquiries. Multi-year is there if it takes multiple years to fix any of the gaps that are identified, if any. None of the gaps, I'm not concerned whatsoever that there's going to be a multi-year anything. I think this is going to be a 3-hour afternoon session to go over the items here, and that if there are any gaps here or there, we'll gladly fix them. But I don't see anything that's going to take a significant amount of time to adjust following the conclusion of this process. So that's what I have to report. It's a minor procedure. I wouldn't make it anything bigger than that. They're simply doing an audit of our main legislative items, and they're going to give us some good professional assessment at no cost to the town to do so. I think we're getting a pretty good deal out of it.
And like you say, that meeting is scheduled near the end of June on your behalf, and would the department comment on when they might have their results back to us then after that meeting?
They did not comment on that. It usually just depends on how the meeting goes. They don't usually want to put themselves into a corner prematurely before they see the materials they're going through.
Okay. Well, and like I said in various interviews, and that the town is working cooperatively and collaboratively with the minister on this matter, and we will be more than happy to furnish all the materials and look forward to their input and hopefully have the results within the next 1 or 2 months and move forward. All right, so maybe a motion to receive 11.1 for information. Councillor Chapman, all in favor? Okay, and okay, that's all 7 in favor. Okay, good. And then we have 11.2, call for nominations. Councillor Holm?
Yes, for 11.2, I'm wondering if it will be added to the town's website in case there is somebody in the community who wishes to nominate somebody. I think this is appropriate that it's not just the 7 of us, that it's thrown out to the entire community.
I think that's appropriate, that it can be added to our website for that kind of profile. So you move to receive it for information and direct it be added into our website for information. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. All in favor? Okay, and that's carried unanimously. And 11.3, that's a very welcome letter from the chamber, and we appreciate the congratulations on the various aspects of improvements within the town of Coaldale. So my thanks to the chamber for putting that forward. A motion to receive that for information. Councillor, oh well, we got a plethora of people. So we'll give it to Councillor Pauls. And any discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, and that's carried unanimously. And then 11.4, we kind of talked about that. Does anybody care to move that for information? Councillor Avery moves that. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Okay, and that's carried unanimously. Okay, and then that's good. Then we have 12.1, Emergency Advisory Committee minutes of January 22, 2021. So Councillor Pauls is our representative. Do you have anything to add to that report, or you want to move that for information, Councillor Pauls? Okay, Councillor Balls moves that item 12.1 for information. Any discussion? I see none. I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, and that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. So I believe that concludes all the business matters that are involved in the public session of the meeting. So with that, I would ask for a motion to go into closed session. Councillor Holm, all in favor? Getting there. So I think, even though it wasn't synchronized as well as I like, I believe everybody voted in favor. So if somebody was against, please let me know right away, but I'll consider that unanimous otherwise. So it's unanimous. Councillor White, do you have something to say?
Can we have a 5-minute break before the next meeting, please?
Sure. Yeah. Well, we're kind of up to depending on people redialing back in anyway. So yeah, if you want to take 5 minutes to re-engage, that'd be fine. Okay, so we'll close the public session and then move into the closed session within the next 5 minutes then.